Okay, here we go. We have the best weapons in the Kinetic slot, and this is kind of a big mashup because we're also including some exotics along with special weapons. So let's just go ahead, get the ball rolling, and we'll start with primary weapons. We shall begin with exotics. I have Final Warning, Kvastov, Huckleberry, Outbreak, Bad Juju, Alethanum, and Necrochasm. Final Warning is honestly just really good for any Strand setup, and it does a pretty decent damage, especially to marked targets. Low-key, a pretty underrated weapon. Kvastov, I'll say it, bro, I feel like it's just one of the outright best primary weapons, if not the perfect primary weapon in the entire game. It has respectable damage for clearing out ads. It has amazing ad clear capability with its exotic perk. It's an exotic primary with shoot to loot, and the catalyst gives it attrition orbs, making it have such a powerful utility purpose no other exotic primary is going to match. Between its extra damage on ricochets, you being able to power up those ricochets by getting an orb of power, picking up those orbs with shoot to loot, and it also creating those orbs with attrition orbs on its new catalyst, this weapon is genuinely the best exotic primary in the Kinetic slot, without a doubt. It is so good. However, I feel like a weapon that doesn't get too much love is the Huckleberry, but Huckleberry is an absolute filthy workhorse weapon. This is a weapon that increases its own rate of fire as you use it and damage all on its own, and it's also able to reload itself. So if you have an SMG that increases its own rate of fire, increases its own damage, and can reload itself, what is there not to like about a weapon that is like this? Through its exotic perk and Ride the Bull, you increase the rate of fire and recoil while you're holding down the trigger, and final blows dealt with this weapon reload the magazine. Also adding the fact that it does have Rampage built into the weapon, and the exotic catalyst now has this weapon having kinetic tremors. Very underrated SMG and exotic primary in my opinion, but don't worry Ryan, I'm giving our Huckleberry the flowers that it deserves. Genuinely, give this weapon a try. Outbreak I feel like is definitely not as good as it used to be, but could still be good in a setting in which you are having to dump all of your remaining ammo for some deeps, and you have nothing left, no special, no heavy, no abilities, no nothing. Dump some Outbreak with the boys. Plus, I feel like I'd do a little bit of a disservice if I didn't even mention one of the most storied primaries in this game's entire existence. However, Bad Juju, very freaking good. At max stacks of String of Curses, you get up to 2% super energy per kill, which is low-key insane. And if you have 100 super, you'll be able to gen a super much faster than you would without using the Bad Juju, not to mention it does increase its own damage with the String of Curses, and is overall pretty dang nasty and has some good utility situations. If you need a gen a super, put on Bad Juju. Don't sleep on this gun. I feel like this gun really does just not get any appreciation from people in the community. I have to talk about it here and give it some love because it definitely deserves it. I have a Alethanum here just because it is a primary ammo mountaintop. That is it. Not really used to make ammo like that anymore because we live in a meta where we have 200 weapon stat and you're just printing bricks everywhere. But hey, primary ammo mountaintop, only one of a kind. And lastly, I saved one of my favorite primary exotics in the game. Unfortunately, as much as I would love to put in Osteo here, I feel like Necrochasm is just better in every sort of aspect. Necrochasm is so nasty. It has a combination of both One For All and Desperado on the same weapon. It creates Cursed Thrall explosions on precision kills. So boom, we all know how good the Cursed Thrall origin trait is. Well, this is an exotic weapon that you don't even need to get a melee. You just pop them in the head, bang. And not to mention, this assault rifle, auto rifle, can get up to, wait for it, 1,000 RPM and is able to refill its own magazine without having to reload it. Skipping reloads, 35% damage buff, Cursed Thrall explosions, and 1,000 RPM. Yeah, dude, Necrochasm is so greasy, so good. The only problem with it, so you have to play Crotazen to get it, which, my boy Jay, he does Crota Yeets on Twitch if you want to check him out. I hope you get some loot. Regardless though, Necrochasm gets some love from me. It really is a darn good exotic auto rifle. If you haven't used it, give it a try. You won't be disappointed. What about the legendary primary kinetic weapons we have? Honestly, dude, I kept it down pretty low because if I'm being brutally honest, when it comes to kinetic legendary primary weapons, I feel like there's only realistically a couple spots for them to shine. Either a shoot to loot explosive payload roll situation to pick up ammo in the damage phase. I'm looking at you, Vulpecula and 7 Seraph Revolver, both are 180s with that roll. Also, the Hung Jury does have that roll too, but that's a Hung Jury. And then we do have the submission and multi-mock combo of SMGs. These SMGs are just so greasy, right? You have attrition orbs, kinetic tremors on your multi-mock, amazing utility, and you have submission with kinetic tremors, chaos reshaped, and soul drinker. Absolute mogging material. Midnight Coup, Fatebringer, good workhorse hand cannons, but I feel like realistically you're going to use submission or multi-mock instead of one of those two over those in certain situations. I try to be a little bit strict here just because there's so many weapons for us to go over. Kinetic slot primary weapons don't really leave too much for you to really sink your teeth into. I know there are some situations in which some can shine, Fast Stalker, but we got to keep it a buck here. Hey, let's keep it moving. Okay, we begin our exotic special category. I have Witherhoard, Izanagi's Burden, New Land Beyond, my goat, Bastion, the LARP Blade, you know, Praxic Blade. We like to LARP a little bit sometimes. Agar Scepter, and asterisks on this one nowadays, but like, you know, Navigator used to be really good for the grapple point, but like grapple melee really got its power clipped from under its own knees. I have to leave a little bit this of an asterisk here. It could still be useful if we ever find another way to get some crazy grapple melee tech damage rocking, but for now, just keep that one on the back burner. Witherhoard's one of the most tried and true exotics to ever exist. Especially now, if you want to have someone on your fire team who's using 1k, you pop a Witherhoard on them and make their 1k do more damage type bot. Izanagi's Burden, polarizing. Mount Rushmore of exotic material. It's like a truck, gotta give it some love. New Land Beyond, I don't need to talk about why this gun is on here. It's my favorite exotic. Monster ammo reserves, monster total damage, one-shot barrier shields, even in ultimate level content, which is minus 50. Very great at what it does, efficient at what it does. So good. Bastion, absolute showstopper, bro. Hits like a truck, has old 1-2 trench in it, very solid. You can get its own debuff now because particle reconstruction is just permanent. And did you know that when you hit a target with all 18 pellets in a burst from this weapon, your next melee attack within the next 3 seconds, it's going to do 300% additional melee damage. That is insane. And then dealing melee damage grants this weapon a 45% increased damage buff and a 15% decreased charge time. Genuinely, such a slept on exotic that puts in a lot of work. Then we have the good old Agar Scepter, because Agar Scepter has always been just a really darn good trace rifle, can add clear very well, has a great catalyst. Overall, one of the most tried and true old school exotics in the game. Gotta give some love to the Agar Scepter. Once again, Navigator, asterisk for the nav point. All right, and let's move over to legendary special weapons. Starting off, we have our 2 micro missile grenade launchers, Gizmo, Mountaintop, great for movement. They also have pretty decent damage perks as well if you do want to try and squeeze them in a damage roto. The Gizmo is just a better version of the Mountaintop. It has better perks, better damage perks, better ammo perks. With it having access to things like air trigger, slide shot, envious arsenal, all in 3rd column, paired with honing or aggregate charge, or even bait and switch in the 4th column for a damage perk. It does just have a lot of good options to pick and choose from, and if you want to have one that is mainly designed for movement, you could just roll one with air trigger and something like bipod in that 4th column. Mountaintop is still the same type of situation that you would use it for if you don't have access to the Gizmo, but it's just a little bit worse. Threat level is flat out one of the best raw damaging legendary weapons in the kinetic slot, especially as a special shotgun. This thing completely ranks some mad DPS. I like to run Cascade Point All-Star paired with the Kinetic Synthesis artifact mod that allows you to make ammo when dealing damage with a kinetic weapon. If there's any boss that is in shotgun range, the threat level can absolutely lay waste to it, my friend. This thing is very disgusting. If you have the ability to do Pantheon runs, hit your hands on the threat level, it is that good. Conspiracy Honed, just the flat out best damaging sniper rifle in the game. You can run it with Vorpal in the 3rd column, and then Bait and Switch or Firing Line in the 4th column. Not to mention we have permanent access to Sniper's Meditation, so it's just a free damage buff for any sniper rifle. The only thing about this weapon is that the column 2 enhanced heatsink is very important for this specific weapon, as this cuts down how much heat this weapon will generate per shot, and that is very important on this weapon. But if you do get an enhanced heatsink and then the double damage roll on the Conspiracy Hone, let me tell you, my friend, you have scored big time. This weapon is very good. You can also knack with it to shoot more shots than you typically would if you're just shooting this weapon normally, and honestly one of the main reasons to run the Equilibrium dungeon. Generally just an overall monster of a weapon. I have the Alone as a God as a similar reason why we have it the Conspiracy Honed here. Although the Alone as a God isn't as good as a Conspiracy Honed, it is still a very solid sniper rifle. You can do the threat level roll with Cascade Point All-Star, but it does have things like rewind rounds in that third column. You can pair that with Kinetic Tremors or Aggregate Charge. Very, very strong sniper rifle just in general, especially if you have the ability to run Pantheon for it. The Praise Revenge unfortunately does not have its double damage roll anymore, which really kind of stinks, but it's still a really good sniper rifle, kinetic sniper rifle with rewind rounds paired with All-Stars, a pretty good roll. It also does have elemental honing or even kinetic tremors, and it does have the time lost magazine origin trait, allowing for this thing to have really big magazines for you to dump your ammo with. Any Vault Glass weapon is going to be good in a damage rotation simply because of that origin trait, so keep that in mind. Praise Revenge is no exception to that rule. Very, very strong rapid fire kinetic sniper. Not as insanely cracked out as it was when we first got this update, when it had the double damage roll, but it's still very, very good. Although I will say the Supremacy from Last Switch is a very great substitute. If you don't have the Alone as a God, if you don't have the Praetus Revenge, you can very much so make do with a Supremacy, just depending on the type of roll that you need. You could do an infinitely firing one where it fires all of its rounds with rewind rounds of 4 times the charm. You can go rewind rounds bait and switch. Heck, you could even do a just overall really good in-game style roll with something like Lead from Gold and Kinetic Tremors. Great ammo economy, great splash perk. Kinetic Tremors will proc twice when enhanced on a rapid fire frame sniper rifle, and rapid fire frames shoot the fastest. So overall, just a very good weapon if you don't have any of the other sniper rifles that we have mentioned. Supremacy will do you right. Trust me, my friend. I do briefly want to mention how good the Perfect Paradox can be. If you are in any sort of melee S-style build, the Perfect Paradox with its origin trait, Cast No Shadows, is very, very nice. Cast No Shadows reads as dealing melee damage increases this weapon's handling and loads a small amount of ammo from reserves. This is a very good 1-2 punch shotty. If you're doing any sort of Celestial Fire or Incinerator Snapping, whatever it may be on a Warlock, this is a very good weapon to use. Or even, you're just bonking and you need a 1-2 punch bonk weapon. This is really good just because you're not going to be reloading it as much through the origin trait, which is awesome. We'll happily take that. It is still a rapid fire frame shotgun. It has Trench Barrel. It has All-Star. It does not, unfortunately, get Trench Barrel and 1-2 punch rolled at the same time, as 1-2 punch and Trench Barrel are both 4th column perks. But once again, the origin trait gives this weapon a purpose that is very straightforward and overall just a very good weapon to have in your vault. I do have Succession here just because it is a bit of a niche pick, but is great for any majors. You run this bad boy with Lead from Gold or Reconstruction paired with Recombination. Very good weapon for any majors you come across in content in which you are underleveled in. And for the memes, it does have a Discord and Redirection infinite ammo added clear meme roll. I know some people like that, so I mentioned it, but a nice niche pick in certain scenarios for sure. Now we're moving a bit more into just raw Stasis and Strand special weapons. First up, I do have the Tenacious Mastery. This is a Stasis rocket pistol, as I like to call them, micro missile frame sidearm. And even now with its revamped perk pool, I still think that the best just overall raw perk pool in general is going to be something like Air Trigger and Chill Clip. Just has great splash perk, great ammo efficiency with Air Trigger, and you're never going to use a rocket pistol in a damage scenario, at least 4 damage. So yes, even though it does something like Bait and Switch or Frenzy or One for All and Surrounded in the 4th column, some pretty heavy hitters respectfully, I still think the best perk is going to be Chill Clip in that 4th column, but none of the other options are going to be necessarily bad, right? Also has access to Desperate Measures for those of y'all that like that perk. It is here on this weapon. Riptide, now having permanent access to particle reconstruction, does deserve a mention here. It does have things like auto-loading holster and overflow in the 1st column, and then controlled burst and chill clip in that 4th column. But it also does have access to the accelerated assault origin trait if you are lucky to get a shiny version of the Riptide with that origin trait. That'll be greatly appreciated. Pretty solid workhorse fusion rifle, but now has permanent access to its own debuff. Very solid weapon. The Critical Anomaly, I'll be honest, I sometimes don't know what to do with. It has such an interesting and unique perk pool, but even then, I don't really use it all that much. But I feel like it has such a good perk pool, I can't just not mention it. You have Rewind Rounds, Chill Clip, and Reconstruction all in the 3rd column. And then the 4th column, you have Bait and Switch, Chaos Reshape, and Elemental Honing. Honestly, pick and choose what you want out of this bad boy. It is a heavy hitter like the Succession and does drop from the Salvation's Edge raid. if you are able to run that raid and get this weapon. Or maybe you just have this weapon's pattern, who knows? Regardless, too good of a perk pool to just not even mention whatsoever, although we have a lot of good sniper rifles to pick and choose from at this point in the game. The Ouster engine is a new area denial frame grenade launcher, and I would just flat out say it's the best one in the game. This bad boy is rocking with air trigger, blast distributor, and auto loading, all in the third column. And the fourth column, good lord, is this thing packing. Chain reaction, aggregate charge, chaos reshape, and one for all. Holy crap, this thing has a lot of great perks to pick and choose from. If you are going to use this thing in a damage rotation as like a legendary Wither Horde, obviously auto-loading holster is what you're going to want. If you're spamming this thing all over the place, maybe to help generate some ammo for your fire team, air trigger I feel like is going to be the best option. Blast distributor is great for any grenade builds to get some quick grenade stats, although you will have to manually reload it in that case. And then it does have just some pretty solid damage perks and aggregate charge, chaos reshaped, and one for all, depending on what drops for you. This bad boy's got you covered. Also, not to mention, it does have a Rhyme Stealer and Crystalline Converter roll for frost armor stacks. Overall, this weapon is just very, very solid. If you are running any portal activity and see this weapon as the drop for that day from that activity, I would definitely at least do a few runs of that activity just to get your hands on at least one copy of this weapon. It's very hard to just flat out miss entirely and have just duds in every single perk slot that you could possibly have with a weapon that has this strong of a perk pool. Yeah, man. Oh, hey, not to mention, you do have access to a weaken clear permanently forever now, so you can use this weapon as a pure utility stick debuff tool as well. Overall, very, very good area denial frame grenade launcher. Now we'll move over to a more Strand focused portion of the video. We just talked about one air denial frame GL. Let's talk about another one, the Festival Flight. This is one of my personal favorites. This weapon has really grown on me and it's gotten a lot of usage out of me just having them in my vault, especially once again. Now you can go decrypt them with your legendary marks into Solstice Weapon Ingrams to roll for this weapon. Very much so worth your time, especially with things like Unraveling Orbs, Horde Shuttle, allowing you to add some passive damage over time with your Strand weapons, at least having one source of Unravel, even if you are on a non-Strand subclass. With perks like Demolitionist, Blast Distributor, and Envious Arsenal in your third column, you have a wide variety of options to use depending on the situation you're using it in. Then it does have things like Attrition Orbs and Elemental Honing, once again depending on the type of situation that you are in. I've gotten a lot of value out of a Demolitionist and Attrition Orbs roll. I've also gotten a lot of usage out of a Blast Distributor roll as well for some grenade style builds. Overall, man, this is a very just solid, great workhorse weapon. Can be really good to use to just gen a bunch of ammo with a high weapon stat. This weapon has just a relatively high ammo gen stat in general, with 200 weapons, finders, and scout on your helmet. You can use this weapon to single-handedly print ammo for your entire fire team, and overall, just a very, very awesome weapon. We have the good old Lance Ephemeral from the Des Perpetual raid with reround rounds and elemental honing. Simple and straightforward. Rapid fire frame sniper rifle with good damage. I briefly do want to mention the Call, which was the first rocket pistol in the Kinetic slot. It does have access to things like Lead from Gold and One for All as a perk combo, but it also does now have access to Chaos Reshaped, and it still has Golden Tricorn, which is a bit of a niche perk to use, but can be very good on this weapon, especially as a Strand weapon. It can be pretty good. Also, is crouchable, so it does get bonus points for that. The Scatter Signal is still just a very great workhorse weapon, especially once again, same rule applies to this weapon that applied to the Riptide. We have permanent access to particle reconstruction, so this weapon will always have its own debuff for free. Maybe you dump all of your 1k and then you switch to this weapon to dump all of it. Not a bad option, especially it having a pretty fat magazine as well. Good damage perk, rapid fire frame, give me that all day. The Unsworn Trace Rifle, low-key kind of slept on with how nasty it is. It can actually deal like relatively good damage as a trace rifle, especially with the Harsh Refraction Artifact mod. Probably just flat out the best trace rifle in the game, maybe next to the Guardian Games one. It has Shoot to Loot in the third column, and you can pair Shoot to Loot with Chaos Reshape, Elemental Honing, and Detonator Beam is here still as well. And it being a Strand trace rifle means it has access to things like Unraveling, which is just very, very good. You can use this thing to also apply Unravel, make thread links through Horde Shuttle, and have a decent damage perk in Chaos or Honing. Overall, just a very, very good trace rifle. If you are farming Lockset, which is one of the easiest bosses to farm, especially on a Warlock, you just snap your fingers once and the boss will die. Honestly, pretty easy weapon to get. A weapon I would recommend you go out and do a little bit of farming for it, especially considering how easy it is to farm for it. And then that leaves you, Mint retrograde. Do I really need to say more about this weapon? Yes, it's not that good for boss damage anymore, but it is great everywhere else. Add clear, majors. You run this weapon with high weapon stat, you can just chunk and nuke any non-boss enemy. One of the best weapons to ever exist. Even after all the nerfs it has caught, it is still very, very good and is worth your kinetic slot. Obviously, this weapon, you're probably going to use it with rewind rounds and elemental honing. We all know how dominant and how good Mint Retrograde is, so I don't feel the need to talk more about it. Just know, at this point in its life cycle, it's not that great at boss damage anymore, but it's great at everything else, my friend. And with that, we have talked about every really freaking fracking good weapon in the kinetic slot that is worth using and worth taking up that slot. Let me know if I missed a weapon. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the list. Thank you for watching. Consider checking out the Twitch channel at the top link in the description, twitch.tv/kree. I'll see your beautiful faces in that next one. Adios.